What's up guys, this is Scher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I want to make a full review for the Romancing Festival Real Queen Joe banner. Real Queen Joe is a multi-elemental damage dealer that has multiple attacks and can also provide some support. Bertrand is a support damage dealer that can also give you offensive and defensive buffs. Real Queen is a debuffer that can also apply defense down to the enemy to improve the damage of your squad. All of them are very useful and I will be going now to rsrs.xyz website. Let's start with Real Queen Joe. She has 112% endurance and will. Those are very good values, especially when you compare to her past version that only has 81% endurance and 92% will. Joe usually brings new heights for intelligence and she's starting with 141%, the highest one in the game right now, alongside 106% agility. That is more than enough. Moving on, she has a 30% damage increase at all times. When leading weak attacks, she improves damage by 40%. Overdrive attacks improves by 50%, and when using spells improves by 75%. I know, the description seems similar, but in the end, all of them have different values. You're going to have 195% total when attacking on Overdrive, or 145% total when not attacking on Overdrive. That's besides the hit ups that she's going to get, up to 5 times 20%, meaning that by turn 5 onwards, you have an extra 100% damage increase for the whole fight. She also triggers defense up on every turn, up to 5 times in battle, decreasing damage taken by 15%. And she also blocks all damage received for 3 turns, meaning that on turn 4, when she can actually receive damage, she already has 4 stacks of minus 15% damage. This certainly helps her because of some inheritance that we'll be discussing later. She starts the fight with 11 BP, also has 6 BP per turn, and recharges OVG Gouge by 45 points at the end of every turn. Well, a lot of things, and we're not talking about the chase attacks yet. Let's start with skill number 1, Icicle Dark. It's a single target spell with cold and shadow damage, costs 1 BP and has E power. So, when landing an overdrive attack or a weak attack, you recover the user's BP by 5. Very useful, but let's say the enemy is already weak to cold and shadow, use it whenever you want. If the enemy is not weak to cold and shadow, for example, only weak to heat, save to use this skill on overdrive and then you're gonna recharge 5 points of BP. Joe has 2 different spells to use, Rising Inferno and Dark Laces. Both have 11 BP cost, triple S power, are single target, the difference being that one is heat and shadow and the other one is cold and shadow. Exactly, Real Queen Joe is now a shadow specialist. If the enemy is weak to heat, you have to use Rising Inferno. If it's weak to cold, use Dark Laces. If it's weak to shadow, use any. You're gonna choose the right skill for shadow depending on what you actually want as a chase, and I'll be explaining that. But let's explain the extra force effect. Just like with Rock Bouquet review, let's say that you were supposed to do 1 million damage. Well, the first weak force effect is for weak damage. If you were going to do 1 million, then you were going to do 1,250,000 when landing a weak attack. Now, the second effect is for overdrive. If you were supposed to do 1 million damage, you would then do 1,500,000. If both happen, for example, you are attacking on overdrive and landing weak attacks, that should happen, you're going to do 1,750,000 damage. The bad part is that extra force effects do not stack, so the game already wants Real Queen Joe to cycle between either Rising Inferno or Dark Laces into Icicle Dark so that she has extra EP. If she wants to attack 2 times in a row with her best skills, it's also okay, nothing changes, just improves the damage. So, when you use Rising Inferno attack, when an enemy that is weak to either heat or shadow, you are going to trigger 3 additional attacks at least. Dark Burn activates when you land a weak heat attack. Dark Burn is a double S power attack, single target, that will apply a guard down, a defense down, and a heat defense down to the enemy, decreasing the defenses respectively by 25%, 15%, and then up to 30%. Only for 1 turn, so the problem is that you never know the order of your chain's attack, so Dark Burn may improve a lot or not as much, but it's just extra. And then, if you landed a shadow weak attack, the trick is, if the enemy is only weak to heat and you use it heat attack that landed weak, your skill still has the shadow element, right? So it will consider that to trigger Dominant Blaze. Dominant Blaze is a triple S power attack, single target, Heat in Shadow and will heal her for around 3000. That's right, she's going to heal to max every single time she attacks and chase with dominant plays. We also have, when landing a weak attack, triggers Checkmate, a triple S power attack with Heat and Cold. So, as you can see, she's going to chase with double S power attack, triple S power attack, and then triple S power attack just by using a Heat attack on a weak enemy. That is insane. And that doesn't stop there. If you are attacking on Overdrive, you're gonna get 2 extra chases. And the first one will be Split Blaze. That attacks random enemies between 2 to 3 times with B power. Heat and Shadow damage. And we recover all surviving allies HP by around 400 with each hit. So healing at least 400 2 times or 3 times. Now, you're gonna get yet another one. That is Twilight Fall. Because this triggers when you land a Shadow Overdrive attack. And it's a double S power attack that can instant kill. Forget about the instant kill. It's just extra damage to help you do more. In the situations, you're gonna attack 6 times. If you are just landing a weak attack without Overdrive, you attack 4 times. That is already insane. But now, if you are actually choosing the cold setup, that is Dark Laces, it's going to chase with different skills. For example, Spectacle Portal, that hits 3 times with Sync Power. This is much stronger than Dark Burn, and because it will effectively do always the same damage, it is usually better if the enemy is weak to both elements to go with the cold setup. More about that as well. And you are also going to chase with Dominant Blaze, you are also going to chase with Checkmate, but on Overdrive, instead of chasing with Split Blaze, you're going to chase with Odd Circle. Odd Circle is the same attack that she had in her past style that applies a 15% attack boost and a 25% defense boost to decrease damage taken from the enemies. It is double S power, as you can see, and will do less damage than Split Blaze. But defense boosts are usually more important than heal effects, unless you are using Real Queen Joe as a secondary healer. And that should not be the case, because this is only on Overdrive. See? Although, theoretically, you could get Joe into Overdrive every single turn if you had people like Sheree and Hawk in the same team, but it's not so practical. Okay, so if you want heat damage, you're gonna use Rise Inferno. If you want cold damage, you're gonna use Dark Laces. But what is the best setup for Shadow? For Shadow is Rise Inferno. Why? Because Rise Inferno will have Shadow in almost all of the attacks. Look. Dark Burn has Shadow, and then Dominant Blaze has Shadow. Checkmate does not have Shadow, Split Blaze does have Shadow, and Twilight Fall does have Shadow. So, that's it up. If you're supposed to use Cold versus enemies weak to Shadow, you're gonna lose at least 1 attack into that. Use it only if you really need that Odd Circle. Okay, so Real Queen Joe is an insane damage dealer. She does not lose LP while having so many chains attacks that always have strong damage. If you want to inherit something, you should be inheriting Flame Force. This will give a 20% hit up for the whole fight. So, she also applies all other surviving allies Rousing Bound. That when anyone gets attacked, but not you, that got the effect, will trigger an attack boost to yourself that buffs 5% attack damage by 2 turns and can stack, and also a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 20%. Now, in practice, how does that work? If the enemy uses an AoE attack, then all 4 characters besides Joe will get attack and defense boost. And that's why she has extra defense ups, because Flame Force now does not work on her. She had this effect on the passive style, active via her own passive. And that is why Joe needs the extra defense ups, because she cannot get the effects of Rousing Bound herself. Everyone gets besides her. It makes sense in the end. Now, you could also use Odd Circle as inheritance if you wanted to go for extra defense boost, but she will lose so much damage potential. I don't recommend doing that. And you can also inherit Glacial Ray for cold setups, because this skill here can be used only 5 times per battle, but she blocks damage for 3 turns, and then on turn 4 waits to use Overdrive because the skill has delay, and you're gonna damage block for 2 other turns. if she's used as a tank, she can block damage for 13 turns if you so want. Because of the extra OG generation, she will always be on overdrive every 2 turns. No other skill makes too much sense to use with this Jo, to be honest. And she works as she is, a very strong damage dealer that uses 3 different elemental types and also works in many different squads that now have elemental leaders. For example, you can use her together with Saruin. Saruin will give her 2 extra effects. 3 BP when attacking with Shadow, but also Shadow attack boost that improves 45% Shadow damage. Well, you can only trigger once, but if your whole squad has Shadow damage, this can actually help her damage a lot. She also works super well with Fornews. Oh yeah, Fornews is such a good character because cold squads are easy to make now, and he gives a lot of effects. Rapid's Blessing. You give her 1 BP when attacking with cold, self HP recover once, and everyone will then get a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 10%. And she will also receive a SGR Endurance Intelligence and Will buff of 5%, and all surviving allies will get 45% cold attack boost. But now the secret here is that Fornews doesn't have any limit to trigger this. So if she attacks multiple times with cold attacks, then everyone benefits. She can give as much as 6 cold attack boosts of 45%. So people like Hatchet, Therese, Silver, and many others will benefit from that damage increase. And you also get the extra shadow damage or cold damage by using either Saruin or Fornews. As for Fire, I believe Emerald will be the best leader. I feel like she offers the most by Enhanced Sorcery, also improving spell damage, Elemental Enhance for Heat being higher than the other leaders, and she also gives the same defense boost for everyone when you attack with Heat. Okay, there are other Heat specialists coming, especially the newest Will help her as well. Overall, she is good as she is and just gets better by adding the right units. Real Queen Jo deserves a 5 out of 5 and it's a must-have in the current game. Bertrand is the next one. He's a hybrid. He uses a sword with both fire and water elements. You can find one to fully upgrade Triple S. He does have 124% in SGR in intelligence values, and as you can see, not as high. Jo has 141, but he needed both. That's why he cannot reach such a high potential. Endurance and Will is 112, higher than the normal, and 100% agility. Now, he starts the fight with 13 BP and grant all surviving allies momentum skill and momentum spell no turn limit. All you need to do is land one skill attack or one spell attack to trigger these effects. If you land a skill attack, then you're gonna grant all surviving allies enhanced arts that improve skill damage by 10%. This is much like a heat up, it's for the whole fight, but lock it into skills. But also, all surviving allies a defense up of 10% damage reduction. Then you're gonna grant yourself Attribute Enhancement 1. On the next turn, all allies will buff SGR, Endurance, and Dexterity by 5%. But if you trigger 5 times because of 5 characters that can use a skill, you can then buff 25% of this status right on start of a turn. You are also going to grant yourself Healing Energy. That is a skill that will allow you to heal all party for very small but 37% chance. That means that it's not reliable, right? But if you have 5 characters using skills, you are likely to trigger at least 1 healing, sometimes more. Well, RNG is not reliable but can help. Now, this is if you use skills. Now, if you use spells, you're gonna buff Enhanced Sorcery. That is 10% spell damage increase for the whole party, much like Heat Up, lock into spells. Will also grant all surviving allies defense up, decrease damage taken by 10% for the whole fight. And then we'll grant all allies buff to Agility, Intelligence, and Will by 5% on start of each turn. And Wearing Wave 1. Wearing Wave 1 is better, in my opinion. On the end of a turn, you have a 37% chance to give all surviving allies OG Gouge by 15 points. Well, okay. 15 points. Well, let's say in a turn you got lucky and got 3 triggers. That's 45. A character like Joe already gets 45 points by herself. If she gets another 45, that's 90. If the enemy attacked her twice, she's already on overdrive on the next turn. So this can be very good, but it's also RNG based, not so reliable. Okay, now we come to the part where we have to discuss. What if a character has both skills and spells? He can trigger both. Bertrand is the case. Well, just by using skill number 3, that is a skill and chases with a spell, you are going to trigger both effects. And not just Bertrand, actually many characters that are also meta. Well, Shaw is getting out of the meta, but he's still a pretty good character. With his skill, Burning Descent, he uses a spell and then a skill. Okay. And then you have characters like Saruin as well, that is hard to use unless you are using a full Shadow squad, but he has both skills and spells. Other case, for example, all spellcasters like Joe will be able to use a normal attack that will have this icon as well. The staff icon triggers as a skill. So use a normal attack and you will trigger the skill part of Bertrand passive. Many other characters will have similar setups as well, like Leon especially. Leon can use his second skill, that is a spell, Merciful Light, and he chases with a physical one, so he triggers both effects on turn 1. Another character that is meta and can do the same is Liz. Liz has both skills and spells. Yet another one, of course, Polka. Polka has both skills and spells. You can inherit a spell, it's better because the second one here does not do damage. So plenty of characters that can actually trigger both effects, and when you look on the possibilities, well, you're gonna get at least 6 defense ups, but more if your character can use both skill and spells. And you're probably gonna use Leon a lot together with Bertrand because it's easy to use, sometimes even Liz together with Den, and that will allow you to have maybe 7 defense ups for the whole party in turn 2. That's right. And you will also be buffing multiple different status, and also triggering the chance to heal and the chance to get OG Gouge. So a lot of different effects with Bertrand just looking on those 2 effects. Now, when he himself lands a skill attack, he would then buff all surviving allies, STR, Endurance, and Dexterity by 15%. As you can see, STR is offensive, Dexterity is offensive, but Endurance is defensive. That's already pretty good. And he will also grant all surviving allies an end of turn recover. This one is guaranteed. Guaranteed. And we'll chase with Nocturnal Chase. This is a triple S attack with slash and shadow damage. But if he lands a spell attack, he would then buff Agility, Intelligence, and Will. That's actually better because Will is a status that we like to buff a lot to reduce chance of being inflicted with ailment, be debuffed, and then he will grant all surviving allies end of turn OG Gouge. Very small. This is sad because it's just 5 points, but if you really need to buff your Will, you should choose the spell route. And then he's going to chase with Flame Onyx. It's weaker, just as power. Instead of shadow, it's heat and cold, and will debuff the enemy intelligence by 10%. Well, it's not a guarantee, but 124% intelligence is more than enough. As you can see, you have a setup for heat and cold, a setup for slash and shadow. You can actually cover so many elements with Bertrand, but he's not really a strong damage dealer, he just helps with damage. Now, on the start of a turn, he gets 2 BP, so he's a 5 BP per turn character, and he will grant all surviving allies an attack boost that improves damage potential by 15% for only 1 turn, but also 10% hit ups 5 times to reach as much as 65% improvement on start of turns, alongside at least 50% if you are using a full skill or a full spell setup. You're gonna reach 115%. Then he has Intrinsic Sword 5, 30% damage increase at all times, reduces damage taken by 40 when resisting, and has a 37% chance to evade resisted attacks. That's cool because he's a support unit. Support units having chance to evade actually helps a ton. Now talking about his skills, the first one is Shade Cut. That is a slash and shadow attack that can debuff the enemy defense by 15%, only for one turn though. It's not fast, it's just a free attack. Shade Cut will then allow him to chase with Nocturnal Chase, and also apply the end of turn recover. Now, the second one, Flame Bound Ice Strike, it's a single target cold and heat attack, and when the attack hits, grants the target morale down medium. This will decrease damage at the source by 25%. Lasts for 3 turns, that's pretty cool. And will also grant him a morale up of very large effect that will improve his damage by 40% for 3 turns. Those effects do not stack. The attack itself has double S power and costs 9. It looks like the game wants you to cycle those 2 skills, right? But when you use Flame Bound Ice Strike, you're gonna chase with Flamanix, Heat and Cold as well. See that he's now a Heat and Cold damage dealer. But then, you also have the skill Dark Judgment. This one here is if you want more damage. It's a single target slash and shadow attack that will buff his SGR and intelligence by 40% on max level. We then chase with Twilight Fall. Twilight Fall is a spell, as you can see here, Heat and Shadow. It has a chance to instant kill, but forget about that, it doesn't matter. Double S power as well. 2 attacks with double S power is much stronger than any 4S power attack, especially because you are also buffing your SGR and intelligence. And skill and spell, meaning it helps you trigger both effects from his momentum right on the start of the fight. If you have BP batteries, you can use him as a damage dealer, cycling between Dark Judgment and Shade Cut. And then by using this, you are going to trigger his end of turn recover HP. You have to remember that the chase attack, while can trigger momentum spell, will not trigger the additional buff. Yes, because it says here, skills activated by skills cannot trigger. So you have to choose either Flame Bound Ice Strike cycle or Dark Judgment cycle. Or you can still, for example, try to cycle all 3 in 3 turns. Open with Dark Judgment, then use Shade Cut, then use Flame Bound Ice Strike, and then back to Dark Judgment. At least don't remember this fight is gonna work, and you're going to keep the morale down effect active while you still have all the other effects running. Bertrand does not really need to use Flame Bound Ice Strike because he's already giving you lots of defense ups that, although 10% doesn't look like it's crazy value, he's already buffing you for other stuff as well. It's a very good kit combination that allows you to do more. Okay, so it's easy to slot Bertrand in parties, and you could also inherit skill Blooming Fireworks to give EP to everyone if you so wanted, but that is not really great. Tenebrae Glaces can also be used as inheritance. This one actually makes more sense because he also attacks twice if you decide to go for the full spell route. This gives him a morale up extreme, 50% damage increase, does not stack. But he chases with Flamanix, so you are actually going to chase with Flamanix twice. And then try to debuff intelligence twice by 10%. 20% intelligence debuff does not look like it's enough for current game, but in some fights it can be. But it's 13 BP as well, much like his Dark Judgment, if you so want. There's also some 0 BP spells like Frostbite or Wind that will allow him to keep up with the spell route instead of using Shade Cut, that is a skill. This is exactly like Joe. Bertrand can also benefit from many elemental leaders. The same ones like Forneus. Forneus will allow him to get extra full damage but also recover BP. There will also be Firebringer, but also probably Emerald. That is a better leader for Fire Squad, but any of them will work. Will have a future style that will also help you with BP generation for fire attacks. And even Saruin that can give him 3 extra BP for shadow attacks. So even if he does have a lot of BP needs, he can find, but it's still hard to build a squad around that extra BP generation, but it's still possible. Okay, but now, who will be the best competitors for Bertrand? Well, we have... the first one was Katarina. I believe Katarina was the best all-around buffer in the game for a while. Can still be better than Bertrand in some situations. And in this case, look, she has a little bit of a problem. She has to allow you to land weak attacks and resist damage in order to trigger all of her effects. She gives defense boost instead of defense up, so she has to keep reapplying via Fury and Schwert. She also needs extra BP generation, but she also provides 2 BP when you are hit if you resist damage. Katarina is still useful in current game and even easier to use now that we got new equipment. And then after Katarina, I believe we got Noel. Right now, Noel is another character that competes because he provides both offensive and defensive setups. And he does less damage than Bertrand, but he heals a lot on overdrive, and it's reliable. And he also has a problem of having to resist some part of his mechanics. I have to say that building can also be another character that can even be used together or compare it to those characters as well. Building allows you to get offensive and defensive buffs too, with Dragon's Upheaval and New Year's Blessing. And she blocks 1 damage for the party. And now we have Bertrand. I would say that Bertrand is probably the best of them in most cases. But if you need ailment resistance, building is better. If you need more BP, Katarina is better. If you need consistent healing, then Noel is better. You see where I'm getting? Noel can also buff break, something that Bertrand cannot. But Bertrand can debuff the intelligence of the enemy. See that they are just kinda side grades? And his biggest problem is having enough BP to keep his cycles. 13 is a lot. And then if you prefer to run his 9 BP cycle, will be easier, but then his damage decreases by a lot. Overall, Bertrand is a lot of good stuff, and I will say he is a 4.5 out of 5. I changed my mind. That's why I'm not pulling for him, because I already got Noel. I feel like I'm pretty served. But a very useful style that will be in many setups from now on. The last one will be ReUniverSe, and she is an M-Arts user that can debuff the enemies by large amounts. 101% endurance, but 114% will are actually nice enough. She has a combo of 140% agility, the highest agility we have in the game right now, and 114% SGR. That could have been higher, but does not impact. 101% intelligence because she can debuff, but she barely relies on intelligence. Most of her debuffs are guaranteed. And charisma on 75% for good self-healings. Starts the fight with 11 BP to use her skill number 3, and also grants all enemies sacrificial fear, permanent in battle. If there's just one enemy left, she will then activate the following. Self-debuff for SGR, Endurance, Dexterity, and Intelligence, 10% volume. Okay, this is covering a lot. We just don't have agility here, but M-Arts skills will use both agility and STR. You're still gonna debuff a little. Debuffing Endurance will help your skill-based characters do more damage as well. I said it was 15% on my preview, but I checked on JP, it's 10%. We'll also apply Defense Down, decreasing the defense of the enemy by 50% for that turn only. So, you're gonna do more damage to this enemy. If there is just one boss enemy, this will trigger from start. If you are in a fight where you see minions and you kill the minions, this will start triggering on the boss. So she's the best character to fight single enemies. Okay. Also, when you use this skill number 3, Suppression Hit, let's talk about the skill. It is fast, single foe, will check before attacking if the enemy has the endurance debuffed. Will then debuff the enemy as charting intelligence by 20% on max level. Will also apply a defense down of 30%. If you use Suppression Hit that has triple S power and 11 BP cost, it's also fast. You will then land 2 stacks of Sacrificial Fear. That lasts for 3 turns. Don't matter about the turn duration, because this is more for fights where you apply the effect but you haven't killed all the minions yet, so that, let's say on turn 3 there is just one enemy left, it will start triggering. And then when you land an attack, you already cast another Sacrificial Fear, and every time that you attack, you always chase with Hell Scratch. That is a single target attack with Blunt and Slash that attacks between 3 to 5 times with E power, also self-buffing attack boost by 10% on each hit. It is easily stronger than 4S attacks. Okay, so You can get as much as 4 stacks of Sacrificial Fear just by using skill 3, and that will give you 200% defense down alongside another one of 30%. So effectively on turn 2 and beyond you can apply 230%. And there's more. On the start of a turn she will apply Morale down medium, decreasing the damage on source by 25%, and also a guard down medium that decreases the defense of the enemy by 25%. Meaning that effectively you reach as much as 255 defense down. Okay, this will improve the damage of many damage dealers, and you will easily see it if you pair her with Dentark. That is actually a very good companion. Dentark has a passive where he gives 4 points of BP for everyone that uses blunt attacks. And he also has single hit attacks. It will be easier to see the damage increasing. He's also someone that gets stronger as the fight goes. 4 extra BP will help ReUniverSe keep her main cycle because she has 11 BP cost for suppression hit, but she's just a 5 BP per turn character. So extra 4 means 9. If you are using other characters like Liz, like Forneus, like Leon, you can effectively keep using skill 3. But besides these effects, she also, on start of a turn, debuffs a random enemy STR and intelligence by 15%. Let's account for everything here. If you have 4 stacks of Sacrificial Fear, you have 40% STR and intelligence debuff. If the enemy did not self-cleanse the endurance debuff, we're gonna buff another 20, so that goes to 60. And by another 15% because of the passive. 75% STR and intelligence debuff, 40% endurance and dexterity debuff. That is a very good combination and will suffice for most fights, unless the enemy has some random mechanics where he uses the fire weakness before attacking, and if it checks for high debuffs, and that happens, like in the new special boss fight, it checks if you debuff it too much, and it will use the fire weakness, hence breaking ReUniverSe mechanic. The good thing about ReUniverSe is that she can still allow you to do much more damage via all those defense downs, and they are not specific like blunt defense down, it is for everyone. Besides, she still has 20% damage increase at all times, reduces damage taken by 30, and if the damage will resist, then reduces by another 40. So as you can see, she's pretty good defensively as well. Moving on, you have skill number 1, Scale Attack Plus, that is free and will give her a defense boost of 15% and lasts for 2 turns, can stack. Well, you're only going to use this if you don't have VP. And there's also Slashing Palm, that is an AoE attack with Blunt and Slash that can debuff the enemy's intelligence by 20%. Because it's AoE, it's okay, but because she's made for single target fights, you're not gonna use this as well. So she does not need inheritance at all. It's just about using suppression hit all the time if possible. And then giving lots of debuffs and defense downs to improve the damage of your damage dealers. If there's just one enemy, she's the best debuffer. If there are multiple enemies, she loses to, of course, Poe. Poe is very useful because he has a fast skill as well. Hers is fast too, and it debuffs a lot of things because of his effect called Steal. And he also allows everyone to debuff. It's hard to use, but okay. There is also Jamil that can debuff many units as well, and he also relies on party synergy. He will keep passing his passive and allowing people to debuff. Another one that does similar is Acelus. Acelus is the same. Although her skill is single target, everyone that attacks after her can even use AoE to apply that in multiple enemies. Acelus can buff break. She can also be used in many hard challenges. While ReUniverSe cannot buff break, but she improves damage by so much that she is now part of the 4 best debuffers in the game. The best one for single target, but kinda bad for AoE. Besides, you could also just inherit Hell Scratch. If you want to finish a boss fight, then she's going to use Hell Scratch one after the other, and that can lead to a 10-hit attack. But you're always going to use skill tree when possible. If you don't use it, Scale Attack by itself will give you only 2 Sacrificial Fear. That is 20% debuff, alongside 15%. It will stop on 35% debuff for SGR and Intelligence, and just 20% for Dexterity and Endurance. ReUqueen is actually much easier to use than you think, and the problem is just the boss behavior that can have the 5 weakness or debuff cleans on start of turns and clashing sometimes with ReUqueen. I used her in some fights where the enemies would remove debuffs on start of the fight and she could still debuff, unlike Summer or Lati that could not in the past. But I don't know how that goes. It may or not work as intended for future. But nonetheless, ReUqueen deserves a 5 out of 5, like one of the best debuffers in the game right now. Back to the banner image, is this banner worth summoning for? Totally yes. I am giving it a Gold Plus award because Joe is an insane damage dealer for 3 different elements and can even provide some support. Bertrand has 4 different elements for damage. He does not do that much, but he helps the party so much that he can fill in any squad. And ReUqueen is the best debuffer for single target fights that also allows your damage dealers to do much more. I believe that ReUqueen Joe and ReUqueen are the best ones, with Bertrand lagging just a little behind, still being a very useful unit. And if you have to PT, I would say either ReUqueen Joe or ReUqueen first, Bertrand last, especially if you got Noel, that can replace Bertrand in many fights. Nonetheless, I pulled it here, got lucky with Joe and ReUqueen in 3 multis, and stopped it because I already have Noel, like I said. But this is my opinion. What is yours? Say here in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. Leave a like because this video was so hard to make. And I see you soon in the next video or live stream. Goodbye.